So our next story, a bill being passed that might as well be called whitewashing the bill. GOP senator who egged on insurrectionists introduced his bill about loving America. Well, like I said, we were talking earlier about Republican framing. So I'd love to see that the bill entitled "Loving America," what it actually represents. Senator Josh Hawley, Republican from Montana, perhaps best known as the U.S. Senator who raised his fist in solidarity before a mob of white supremacists and Donald Trump supporters attacked the U.S. Capitol on January 6th to try to stop Joe Biden from being certified as president, introduced a bill on Monday that he says is about promoting people's love of America. The Love America Act would promote patriotism in education by not allowing federal money to go to any public schools that teach students about how white supremacy or racism played a role in the founding of the United States. It also requires schools that receive federal dollars to ensure that students can read and recite portions of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Pledge of Allegiance at certain grade levels. Hawley said in a statement, "We cannot afford for our children to lose faith in the noble ideas this country was founded on. We have to make sure that our children understand what it makes this country great, the ideals of hope and promise our founding fathers fought for, and the love of country that unites us all." Oh, wow. This guy. Wow. So, this guy, Josh Hawley, Greg Abbott, and Ron DeSantis from Florida and Texas are just like the tripod of moronic bigots of the GOP at the moment. They are just on fire, and I feel like they're just like best friends as well. They're like always just hanging out, like, man, how can we make black people's lives worse today? Oh my gosh. So we start by saying that whitewashing is not patriotism. It's just not. To be an American, to me personally, to be an American is in a way a responsibility. And any country I believe that you represent, because when you represent something, you have to represent all parts of it. You have to represent the truth at the end of the day. You have to take a good, hard look in the mirror, and this comes on a personal level, and say, this is who I am, this is what I am. But the thing is, when you say this is who I am, this is what I am, it doesn't mean it always has to be like that. You could say, this is who I am, but I'm going to change. And then you can but then you still have to look at it. Even after you change, you still have to look at it and say, that's who I was. You can't say, I was never like that. Me, as a recovering drug addict, I cannot ever whitewash my past and say that I wasn't a drug addict, that I wasn't a pimp, that I wasn't a fiend, that I wasn't just, in general, a really, really shitty person. I can't whitewash my own past like that. Just like we cannot whitewash America's past. We all have to live with the consequences of our actions, of our own actions, and of the actions of our ancestors. I'm Puerto Rican, part Puerto Rican, which is a group of people that are Spanish conquistadors, native Taino Indians, and black slaves. So like that's part of my heritage, and it is what it is. Now, when I think about America, sure, yeah, sure, I think about the racism, I think about the bigotry. That goes without saying, because it has to. I mean, it has to be said, but it does go without saying. I do think about it. But I also think that this country is built on is religious freedom, secularism. You know, a lot of our founding fathers were very secular, and they believed that Christianity was a horrible organization, especially at that time, and in this time. And no taxation without representation, which is the main point the Revolutionary War was fought over. And these are things that the GOP also don't believe in. So why wouldn't they're just trying to completely whitewash and frame history in a way that is unrealistic, because nowadays we have no tax, we get taxed, and we have no representation in Washington, and they don't have a problem with it. Religious doctrine is being shoved down our throat and integrated more into law than ever, especially with the fight against the LGBT community and against women in general. Those are religious fights. That's religious doctrine being forced down the public's throat. So that's un-American. If you ask me, that is un-American. That's not loving America. That's not patriotism. That's going back to the days when Britain owned us. We had to follow their rules. Even though they were so far away from us on a mental and physical plane, that they weren't in touch with our reality. And it just seems, when I really start to think about and draw parallels between the founding fathers and the American people of today, and just how the revolution may be coming, and I really hope that it's not as violent as it could be. I hope that we go about this the right way. So Josh Hawley is a huge Trump supporter, Trump superfan, and one of 147 GOP members that voted to overturn the election. So he's a crazy QAnoner. So, and he wants to sit there and wave his American flag and say America is the greatest country on earth. How is America the greatest country on earth? By what metric? Because we're not the greatest in education. We're not the greatest in healthcare. We're not the greatest in wages. We're not the greatest in infrastructure. We're not even the greatest in happiness. We're more miserable now than ever. We're so despondent and depressed. What are we great at? Besides being fat, being in prison, being addicted to drugs. What is America great at? And I don't want to say that as someone who I love my country. But I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. My mom would always hit me with that, but I'm not mad. Not angry. I'm just disappointed. Because I know we could be doing so much better. That's a lot, though. I am angry as fuck. I'm angry that people think that they can get away with this. That you can whitewash our history. You can act like that these things didn't happen. And push a bill of racism and bigotry down our throats. Now, I want to mention something. It's called critical race theory, and this is actually a very interesting topic, which is the theory, which isn't like I believe is fact, but it's that the past and current laws and systems are heavily connected. That the systematic racism we have today is because of what was set up in the past, and the only way to change it is through the system. And this is basic stuff to me. But the GOP and the Republicans fight so heavily against it. Like, it's not a real thing. Like, it can't be quantified and seen in everyday life, and that's a problem. And especially it's a problem because it's not, it's like a college class, and they're this is their rallying call because they know that it's good for their base, and it's a college class and they don't even teach it in public schools. But yet they have such a problem with this experimental way of thinking, which hopefully will become very common practice in the future. But this experimental way of thinking that's for higher educated people, they have such a problem with that, but they don't have a problem with public schools not teaching about slavery and the founding of our country and what it was built on. And if you, this is the problem, and this is the real problem with whitewashing, is if we don't talk about slavery, then we won't get to talk. Then why did we talk about Abraham Lincoln? Why did we talk about the Civil War? And if that's the case, why do we talk about Jim Crow? And if that's the case, why do we talk about MLK? And if that's the case, why do we talk about Malcolm X? And if that's the case, why do we talk about Obama? Like, how far does this go? You can't just say something happened without giving it context. So you cannot talk about American history without talking about the way the people that this country was built on, the backs that it was built on. You're missing out on something beautiful that's in our country, which is the fact that we can change. It may take a long time, but we can change. And the change is happening now. And I think that's the main point that the GOP are so afraid of, is that if you look at history and you see such a drastic change from how we used to be to how we are now. Even there's no denying it's a drastic change, even though there are a lot of the system is still a problem. It's been a big drastic change. So if you could see such a drastic change in history between the minds of the American people and the way that the system used to work and the way it works now, then you could see another evolution. You could see another giant step forward. You could see another expansion. All in your head. You could start to see it. You could start to picture it. Like, oh, the system used to be like this, now it's like this, so it can get better. It can always get better. There's ways to make it better. That's scary. That is what's terrifying to them, is if the American people wake up and realize that it can get better and we can fight for it and we can make it happen with the help of elected officials and our own voice.